Chag Sameach. I always begin my classes by introducing myself and asking everyone in the room to introduce themselves. Who am I? Who are you? Learning together should be a way to build relationships. And it also allows me to make the class into a kind of a conversation. I've never taught like this before. That's the challenge. I will tell you who I am, and I hope to meet you in the future. I'm Rabbi Jonathan Berger. My main role in the community is at Schechter Day School, but I love teaching Torah in different settings, and it's an honor to be a part of this tikkun. The beauty is that in this time of disconnection, we will be connected by the Torah we study. So I want to begin with a question. Imagine if it were a serious Jewish crime, just to say to yourself, that concert that I really want to go to is on Friday night? Oh, I wish that just once I could break Shabbat. Imagine if just wishing that were a crime. And imagine how overwhelmed our prison system would be if you went to jail every time you said, I want to kill him. And maybe you actually thought about how you would kill him, whether with your own bare hands or something a little more painful. Now, of course, you never were really going to hurt that person, but you thought about it, and you really are mad at them. Imagine if that were a crime. Now, of course, we know that those things aren't crimes in any way. They're not forbidden. The Aseret HaDibrot, which we usually translate as the Ten Commandments, they prohibit actually breaking Shabbat, but not thinking about it, or feeling resentful about Shabbat once in a while. They prohibit murder, but not feeling murderous. And in general, that's typical of mitzvot. Mitzvot are focused on actions, which is why I got interested in the last of the Aseret HaDibrot. The final one, lo tachmod, usually translated as do not covet. It doesn't seem to fit. Sure, coveting isn't a great habit, but why did it rank so high in God's priorities that it earned a place on the two tablets? So together, I'm hoping to explore, can desires be denied? The crime of coveting. We will try to answer these questions. What does lo tachmod really mean? If it's an action, how is it different from do not steal? If it's a feeling, how can God command feelings? And in any case, is it really so bad? And after we understand the commandment a little better, then the question is, how can our understanding transform our lives? So let's begin by taking a quick look through the Aseret HaDibrot. And you'll notice at the top of the slide that I call them the 10 pronouncements, following a lot of scholars who say that a dibra isn't exactly a commandment, perhaps, because it's true, commandments, mitzvot, usually do involve actions. Some of these don't. But they're pronouncements. They're words from God. The first one, Anochi Adonai Elohecha, Asher Hotzeiticha, Me'eret Mitzrayim, Mibeit Avadim. It begins by stating this most important pronouncement. It all begins with an understanding that these concepts come from God. Then follows a long commandment, the second one. Lo yelecha Elohim acharim al panai. Don't have other gods before me, and don't make images of them, and don't bow to them or serve them. Because, says God, I am an El Kana, a zealous God. And it's true, as the commandment goes on to say, as the pronouncement goes on to say, my chesed, my kindness, outweighs my desire to punish by several degrees of magnitude. But ultimately, this is a God who wants to be in exclusive relationship with us. We move onward. Lo tisa et shem Adonai Elohecha lashav. Don't invoke God's name in vain. And then we move on to the day of the week, which most captures our chance to connect to God, Shabbat. Now, it's worth noting that this is the version of the 10 Commandments that appears in the book of Shemot, of Exodus. It's a little different in Deuteronomy as far as the reason given for Shabbat. But what they both have in common, in both versions of the Aseret HaDibrot, we're supposed to take that seventh day and make it holy. And it's not just a day of rest, although it is that. It's a Shabbat Adonai Elohecha, a day dedicated to God. Now, all of these dibrot so far are fundamentals of the relationship between us and God. Monotheism, respecting God and God's justice system. by not taking God's name in vain, such as in a false oath. And finally, Shabbat, our special time with God. We move onward to the next section of the Aseret HaDibrot. Kabet et avicha v'et imecha, honor your father and your mother. Lo tirtzach, you shall not murder. Lo tin'af, you shall not commit adultery. Lo tignov, you shall not steal. Lo ta'aneh v'reacha eid shaker. Respect for life and other more significant crimes. This last one is the basis of a sound judicial system. Once testimony is false, then justice is impossible. And so we again see how these are fundamental dibrot, fundamental pronouncements and conditions for the kind of society and world that God wants us to build. And then we come to the last one, lo tachmod. Lo tachmod beit re'acha, lo tachmod eshet re'acha, ve'avdo, ve'amato, ve'shoro, ve'chamoro, ve'chol asher l're'acha. And this is the version in the book of Shemot. You shall not, and I translate here, covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female slave, or his ox, or his ass, or anything that is your neighbor's. Now, it's worth noting, again, that here too, there's a significant difference in the book of Deuteronomy, where the order is reversed. Here, Beit Re'acha seems to mean your neighbor's household, and then it lists everything in the household. In Dvarim, it lists Eshet Re'acha first, your neighbor's wife first, and then lists all the possessions. One of my professors at JTS convincingly taught that, in general, the book of Deuteronomy is more feminist than the rest of the Torah, and there are ways in which mitzvot and verses get recast to show greater value for women, which I think is a beautiful message. This is the version from Shemot. But what exactly does you shall not covet mean? That's where all of our questions come in. So one answer could be that it's a feeling. And we're going to explore that. But there are those who argue it's more than a feeling. So first, let's see that in context in the next slide. Later in the book of Shemot, when God's talking about what will happen when the Jewish people enter the land of Israel, the Torah says, Ki orish goyim mipanecha, v'yirchavti et gvulecha, v'lo yachmod ish et artzacha. And you hear there that same root of lo tachmod, do not covet, right? I will dispossess nations from your path and expand your borders. No one will covet your land when you go up to appear before the Lord your God 3 times a year. Now, what does that mean? Could it mean no one will desire your land? That's unlikely. If what happens is that 3 times a year, most of the Israelite nation makes a pilgrimage from wherever they live to Jerusalem, and the land lies mostly empty, it's kind of possible that surrounding nations might say, I'd really like that Galilee. And if so, what would the value of God's promise be? In context here, lachmod does kind of seem to mean to steal. No one will take it from you. Don't worry. Go on your pilgrimage. No one's going to take your land. So it's possible that lo tachmod does mean no one will steal from you. However, since only a few commandments earlier it says lo tignov, don't steal, we'd be left wondering, why would God offer the same commandment twice? Elsewhere in Tanakh, there is another use of the word lachmod, which may be more instructive. It comes from the book of Joshua, and it tells the story of how when Joshua was leading the people in the conquest of one of the first cities in the land of Canaan. And God said, this is not the kind of battle where you're all going to grab the gold and silver when we're done and get rich for yourselves. Everything conquered from the city is to be dedicated to me, to God. It has to be put in what's called cherem, dedicated to God. But, the story tells us, one Israelite, just one Israelite, defied this command. And his name was Achan. And in this story, God, through various means, helps everyone realize who was the guilty party, who stole when they weren't supposed to, who gathered loot from what was supposed to all go to God. And so Joshua in a previous verse said, it's you. And here Achan answers Joshua. Vaya'an Achan et Yoshua. Vayomar, Omna anochi chatati l'Adonai. It's true, I have sinned against the Lord, Elohei Yisrael, the God of Israel. V'chazot asiti. This is what I did. Va'ere v'shalal. I saw among the spoil from this battle, aderet shinar, a fine shinar mantle. Shinar was a place, maybe where fancy mantles came from. Achatz tova. Umatayim shkalim kesef, 200 shekels of silver. Ulashon zahav echad 50 shkalim, and a wedge of gold that weighed 50 shekel. Va'acham deim, and there's that root again. Va'ekachem, and I took them. V'hinei tzmunim ba'aretz betoch ha'ohali, v'akesef tachteha. They are buried in the ground in my tent with the silver underneath it. So what does that verb seem to mean here? Right afterwards, Achan says, I took them. So it seems to be a step leading up to taking, but maybe more than desiring, maybe plotting or scheming to take. And this may be part of the meaning of that final one of the Aseret HaDibrot. Not lo tachmo, do not covet, meaning don't want something. But don't devise a plan, don't scheme, don't get crafty, don't take those steps that lead up to stealing. Possibility. But I now want to share with you another perspective from a medieval commentator named Avram ibn Ezra. Avram ibn Ezra lived much of his life in Spain, but he lived a hard life, and for various reasons, both exile on religious grounds and also just poverty, he ended up migrating through different parts of Europe over the course of his life. And there are places in his commentary where it becomes clear that he lived a hard life. And he has a powerful perspective that's been very influential about what lo tachmod might mean. I'm going to offer it to you in Hebrew, and I'm going to read it aloud only because we don't always have a chance to hear this kind of Hebrew. And I invite you to look along as I read, and then we'll translate it. Lo tachmod. Anashim rabim yitzmahu al zot hamitzvah. Ech yihyeh adam shelo yachmod davar yafeh b'libo, kol ma shehu nechmad l'marei einav. Ve'ata ten lecha mashal. Da ki ish kfari, sheyesh lo da'at nechona, v'hu Ra'a bat melech, she yafa, lo yachmod ota b'libo, shishkav ima, ki yeda, ki ze lo yitachen. Ve'al tachshov, ze hakfari shehu ke'echad min ha'meshugaim, she'yitaveh she'yu lo knafayim la'uf hashamayim. Ve'lo yitachen liot kasher ein adam mitaveh, lishkav im imo, af al pi she'yafa, ki hirgiluhu min urav ladat she'yasura lo. So, Avram ibn Ezra writes, many people have wondered about this commandment. How could a man not desire in his heart that which is beautiful? He recognizes that we're human. We can see beautiful things and part of us can want them. How could the Torah tell us that we can't do this? It seems humanly impossible. I will share with you a parable, he says. Imagine a villager of sound mind who sees the princess, the king's daughter, and she's beautiful. Ibn Ezra says he won't desire to sleep with her because he knows it's impossible. And don't imagine, he says, that this villager is like a lunatic who also wishes to have wings to fly in the sky, which is impossible. He gives one more example about one's own mother. And his point is that we actually do learn what's sort of in the realm of, yeah, I can want this, and what's in the realm of, it's absurd, and so we're not even going to get to the point of craving something, desiring, coveting something. So he goes on to say, Kol maskil tzarich she'eda, ki isha yafa, o mamon, lo yimtze'enu adam ba'avur chachmato v'da'ato. And here he talks about his lessons from life. And we'll look at it in the English. He learns, an enlightened person, and again, we believe is on some level speaking about himself because he lived a hard life, that we don't attain beautiful things or people in our lives or relationships all because of our own hard work or wisdom or knowledge in what we do, but rather according to what God has apportioned to him. As the sages said, children, life, and sustenance, not on merit do they depend, but on the stars, on fate. We don't want to teach ourselves or our children or our society to be totally fatalistic and helpless and nothing we do matters. That would be a mistake. But at the same time, Ibn Ezra is saying, don't make the mistake of thinking that all we have in our lives is solely due to our hard work, our good fortune, what we've learned or what we've done. Some things in life just come to us or don't. And if we accept that, he goes on to say, an enlightened person will neither desire nor covet those things that are beyond his or her grasp. Once he knows that God forbade him his neighbor's wife, she'll be further out of reach to him than the king's daughter is in the eyes of the villager. Now, it's important to again recognize, Ibn Ezra seems to know we can't exactly fight feelings. If we desire someone else's beautiful sports car, then telling ourselves, stop wanting it, that's not going to help. What Ibn Ezra believes is that we can cultivate our personalities in a way that will keep us from that kind of jealousy. We'll accept what I have and accept what they have. And with that acceptance comes a kind of peace instead of the burning fires of jealousy that can warp our lives. I want to come back to this perspective of Ibn Ezra in a few minutes. But first, let's look at one more powerful medieval perspective from Maimonides, from Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, who lived most of his life professionally and as a rabbi in Egypt, serving both as a physician to the leader of Egypt and the caliphate back then, but also in his spare time writing amazing, powerful, influential books of both Jewish philosophy and Jewish law. In his Mishneh Torah, his legal code, Rambam offers a nuanced understanding of what this law, lo tachmod, might mean. Kol hachomed avdo, o amato, o beito, v'chelav shel chavero, o davar she'afshar lo she'iknehu mimenu. Anyone who, and we'll translate for now, covets or desires, whether it's a servant or a female servant that belongs to his neighbor and wants to buy it, v'yichbid alav bereim, v'hiftzir bo ad shelakacho mimenu, af al pi shenatan lo damim rabim, harei ze over belo ta'aseh, shene'amar lo tachmod. And we'll look, skipping ahead for a moment, at the English translation of that. If you covet something in your neighbor's household that you can buy from him, interestingly, adds Rambam, and weighs him down with pleasantries and begs him until he buys it from him, even for a high price, breaks a prohibition, as it says, you shall not covet. In the Hebrew, Rambam goes on, and I'll move back for a moment, ein lokin alav zeh, mipnei she'ein bo ma'aseh, ve'eno over belav zeh, ad she'ikacha chayfetz shechamad, ki'inyan shene'emar, lo tachmod kesef v'zahav alehem v'lakach talach, chimud sheyesh bo ma'aseh. But even though it's forbidden, we don't administer lashes, which is Rambam's way of saying that even if we had the ideal Jewish court system, this wouldn't be a crime like any other, because it has no action, and you don't actually fully violate the prohibition until you acquire the object you desired. Now, this is, in a sense, mind-blowing. What Rambam's saying here actually is even if the story ends up with me paying not just a decent price, but a full price, a high price for that thing that I got from my neighbor, if the transaction came about because I saw it and I craved it and I couldn't imagine life without it, and again, it wasn't like I could buy the same thing at a store or the same thing from the same craftsman, but I wanted that person's possession. And I asked them once, and they say, no, thank you, it's not for sale. But I bug them, and I bug them, and I nudge them, and I nudge them, even with pleasantries, Rambam says. And finally the person says, okay, fine. You wore me down. Sure, you can have it. Here's what I think is a fair price. And you even double their price. You pay a high price. But Rambam says, you have broken this prohibition of lo tachmod. You shall not covet. So what's happening here? It's worth noting there are differences between Rambam's perspective and Ibn Ezra's perspective. They point us in slightly different directions, but they seem to share an idea that there's something wrong with craving other people's possessions, that being satisfied with what we have is part of the cure, that the warping of our values and personality that comes about when we dream of things that shouldn't be ours, or when we even in a legal way go about acquiring them, there's something wrong about that. That's what the Torah is prohibiting us from. Not just the first step of, oh, I wish I had that, or that would be great for me, but all the damage it can do to our lives. I think these are powerful messages about the meaning of lo tachmod. But I want to share with you one final perspective about the place of this final one of the Aseret HaDibrot in our lives. First, let's take a look at two models of how we experience God. And the two models both come from encounters between human beings and God at the very same mountain, which is called both Mount Sinai, Har Sinai, and Chorev. On Shavuot, the traditional Torah reading on the first day describes the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. And in the description, we read, V'har Sinai ashan kulo mipnei asher yarad alav Adonai ba'esh. Mount Sinai was all in smoke, for the Lord had come down upon it in fire. Vaya'al ashano ke'eshen hakivshan. The smoke rose like the smoke of a furnace or a kiln. Vayecharad kol hahar me'od. And the whole mountain trembled violently. And then the Torah adds, Vayhi kol hashofar holech v'chazek me'od. The blare of the shofar of the horn grew louder and louder. As Moses spoke, God answered him in thunder. So the story of God at Mount Sinai is a story of God being in the lightning and the thunder and the earthquake, the trembling mountain. God revealed God's self at Sinai to Moshe with might and volume and drama. But there's an amazing story elsewhere in Tanakh about an encounter between the prophet Elijah, Eliyahu Hanavi, and God at that same mountain, at Chorev, which is also called Sinai. And we read a very famous story. After Elijah flees there and hides in a cave on this mountain, God says, come out and stand on the mountain before me. And God passed by, and then follows a description of many of these overwhelming, loud physical phenomena that we read about when God gave Moses the 2 tablets. There was a powerful wind and an earthquake and fire. And God, says these verses, was not in any of them. But then, ve'achar ha'esh, after the fire, kol demama daka, which the New Jewish Publication Society translates as a soft, murmuring sound. Vayhi kishmo Eliyahu vayalet panav be'adrato. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his mantle about his face and went out. He stood at the entrance of the cave, and then a voice addressed him. Elijah knew somehow that with that cold mamadaka, with that soft murmuring sound, that's when God was to be found. That's why he covers his face, because he knows he can't see God's presence directly and live. So he covers his face, and then God speaks to him. The message here is that, yes, sometimes God is found in the drama, in the earthquakes, in the fire, but sometimes God is found in the kol demama daka, the things that can be missed if we don't listen. This concept is really crucial for us today, because that's how most of us, if we're privileged, if we listen the right way, can experience God. We're not likely to see God making a mountain tremble for us, sending a prophet down to us with 2 tablets carved be'etzba Elohim, with God's finger. If we're going to find God, it's going to be in this kol demama daka, the soft murmuring sound. And this brings us back to lo tachmod and how we bring God into our lives and the mitzvot that end up being most important and relevant to us. Most of us, no matter how often we say, I'm going to kill him, under our breaths, we're not going to commit murder. And no matter how tempted we might be by this or that aspect of another society, we're not going to go worship idols. But we do live in a society that shouts at us every day that there's nothing that we shouldn't want and little we aren't entitled to have. We can always buy this, get that, become this kind of person through that kind of purchase. But this mitzvah of lo tachmod teaches us the opposite, that real peace and real ways of letting God into our lives involve not pursuing the path of more, but rather of cultivating an attitude of appreciation for what we have. And furthermore, this is a mitzvah that when we observe it, no one knows. Other mitzvot in general, even if they're private, there's some outward manifestation. People might end up knowing, oh yeah, that person observes Shabbat. Yeah, that person, he never hurt a fly, much less commit murder. But chimud, this kind of special desiring or coveting, that's in here. That's the kol dmama daka. That's the way we create more sacred relationships with our friends. Instead of wanting what they have, we want to connect with them. And with God. Because instead of filling our hearts with a desire for more and more stuff, we leave room in our hearts for more and more closeness to Torah and mitzvot and God. So my bracha for us, yes, at this time of being in our houses and social distancing, but especially beyond, when our life gets back to some kind of normal, is that we are so overwhelmed with gratitude for our blessings that it doesn't even occur to us to want someone else's life or what someone else has. But instead, we're filled with shalom and hakarat hatov, peace and serenity and gratitude. I wish everyone a Chag Sameach. I look forward to meeting you together and learning together in the future.